Hey there and welcome to Get Indie Gaming. Announced all the way back at the Microsoft presser during the E3 2013, Below launched onto the PC and Xbox towards the end of last year. Sure, I'm a little late with this review, although there's reasons for that which I'll come across a little later. Like Cuphead, much was made throughout the development cycle of Below's difficulty. If you didn't know, Below has been constantly pitched as something of a tough little blighter to play. As close as a few weeks before the launch, the studio's co-founder, Nathan Vella, spoke of Below as something offering a hard and brutal experience and a game that's, quote, not for everybody. I'll drop a link to this interview given to the gamesindustry.biz website down below in the video description. Personally, I really don't get this sort of approach, and content gating via difficulty is a personal bugbear. I struggle to get behind anything where the developers openly take a game to market that uses a sales pitch along the lines of, hey, we're going to sell you a game. We're going to sell you a game the majority of players aren't going to really be able to play to the point that they might have, and we acknowledge this approach might damage how the game is going to perform. Again, this is from Vella himself. I haven't made this up. So who does this approach benefit? Sure, there's a small segment of players who will get a real kick. A kick from being the tiny group able to see things through to the end without spitting blood. And yet, why put out something that's likely to malign all but the very few? Celeste knew this. Celeste, as the saying goes, is hard as nails. And yet by adding the ability to tweak its difficulty, Matt Makes Games made it accessible to a far wider demographic than its base mode would usually support. Below is something I wanted to like. Below is something I wanted to enjoy. I really wanted this to be something I could get behind, and yet the difficulty issues aside, to say it lacks rewarding moments would be disingenuous. There are some great sections, and I'll come to those in a bit, although they are offset by the annoyance and genuine irritation of the implementation of much of the roguelike elements that go well beyond the point where enjoyment slips into an exhausting and taxing slog in the dark. The frustration starts early doors with a cutscene my grandmother would have described as being just a little bit too much. Sure, it's there to show off Below's unique at-a-distance aesthetic, although it feels so very overblown and downright pompous. As I've already said, it's not all end-to-end meh. The first couple of hours offer up a beautiful mix of audio and visual prettiness. The ambience is of undeniable quality, elevated even further when you play with headphones. The rustle of the wind through the plants and caverns, the sounds of the rocks as you walk over them, down to the soothing tones when you're sitting down at a campfire. Audio-wise, Below is top-drawer material. Just one caveat though on the visuals. Our praise assumes you have decent eyesight. Below uses a camera cue point that's well away from the action, with you just being a little tiny pinprick on the screen. Just like the footage you might have seen of people watching solar eclipses, you'll play with a semi-permanent squint as you figure out what's going on. Even on a huge display cranked up to 4K, I at times really struggled to figure out what was going on. This feeling runs through into the gameplay. Aside from a very few button prompts towards the start, there's virtually zero hand-holding or explanation of what you're really doing. There's an implicit expectation players will use an inquisitive trial and error approach to the overall gameplay loop of exploration, discovery, combat, and death. Usually a good dose of logic helps see you through, although additional cues and insights into how the aforementioned mechanics and associated systems are held together would provide a more rounded and enjoyable experience. The crafting elements, well, they seem almost underdone for a game of this sort. Why are potions you've crafted not detailed so you're able to understand their various qualities? What's the rationale behind the campfire setup which renders them inoperative after only a single use? Why implement survival systems with thirst, hunger and body temperature that punish or at least disincentivize exploration and therefore overall character progression? You simply don't have the time to get out there and explore. Further frustration comes by way of the design choices and how the rooms are put together. why utilise an insta-kill spike trap system that places them within walls, or sometimes behind scenery with perhaps a pixel or two warning? That feels just so unfairly devious, and even those who beat Cuphead on the hardest settings must surely take issue with this level of cack-handedness. There's issues too in the combat. It wants you to be methodical and disciplined, and I don't want to say it, but I'm going to. It wants you to play as if you would be doing so against a Dark Souls boss. Although, as we just said, here you don't have the time with the survival elements with the way they have been applied. While piling on are dissatisfactions, the procedural aspects are just too subtle. How the room layouts change just enough so you're not able to memorize them, but not really enough to offer anything too new or exciting to relieve the tedium of the repetition, and boy is there repetition after repetition, often without reward. In one playthrough I spent a good 45 or so minutes plodding back to find my corpse, only to die within a few short steps of doing so. There were too many of these type of rage-inducing moments to recommend this game to others. Yes, it's very, very pretty. It's awesome to listen to, although after this initial first few hours, there's just not enough to maintain my levels of engagement. If anything below holds you, the player, in contempt, and cares not a jot for the happiness and enjoyment you arguably should be getting from such playthroughs. Yes, I did battle all the way through to the end, and it took many, many attempts to do so. I also left it alone. Over the Christmas period, I decided I was not going to pick this up, hence the delay in putting out this review. But that ending, yes, it's beautiful in keeping with the rest of the game, but it's also one great big middle finger to you, the player, with an undertone that poses so many, many questions. Okay, so some players out there will love Below. Should be Crystal? I didn't. It's just not for me. In a word, Below is quite simply brutal. Had there been a method in which the difficulty could have been tweaked, well, I think I would have enjoyed it all the more and probably would be making a recommendation to go and take a look at it. However, for me, and probably for the majority of you people out there, it's just too damn hard. If, however, you are in that small subsection, the subsection this game, in the words of the co-founder, was pretty much designed for, then yes, Below is something certainly for you, and I think it would be well worth you getting hold of. Full disclosure, I purchased Below for the full RRP on the PC. If you've enjoyed this review, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you've a few dollars to spare, why not consider supporting us via our Patreon? Full details can be found down below in the description. Many thanks for watching, and we look forward to welcoming you all back here soon for more indie game videos.